Long have I waited for this day. I can feel it in the air. The cold wind of winter whispers to me. My nerves are screaming with anxiety and fear, but somehow I remain calm and composed. Long have I waited for this day. When the grey wolf's rage subsides and the barbarians are no more, he will be vulnerable. The Crones will see this as a perfect opportunity to sneak up on Victor. But how would they with me around? Long have I waited for this day. The vampire wasn't the only one hiding a deep, dark and secret power. I had to keep it hidden from the hellhound. Patience and perseverance. I cannot fail. Have I lost faith in humanity? Yes. Yes, I have. How much of blood, sweat and tears have I shed for people? How many helpless beings have I served without taking coin for it? How many times have I risked my life for others? Not a single soul helped my wife that day in the village. Not a single soul told me my son would be sacrificed in some foul ritual like a sheep being led to the slaughter. Not a single soul told me the letter was fabricated. I was made a fool. The villagers and the Crones made me, Ragnar Leifson, a warrior knight that fought in more battles than people could ever think of, into a mockery. No, today I will not fail. Still I remember the Crone's face, that evil smile showing her rotten teeth, that pale skin tightly wrapped on her bones and her dark hands consumed by decaying flesh. The mastermind behind everything that occurred in the village of the Harrow, how she threatened my wife with her undead creatures. I've seen it in my visions. I will never forget her face. She could change appearances as much as she wanted, but that look in her eyes when she saw me all those years ago could not hide that fear. For if I wasn't distraught and stricken with grief over the death of my boy, I would have ripped her to shreds right then and there. None of them expected me to walk out of hell the way I did. The Crones laugh at their victims and their mind games, but would they be laughing when I'm done with them? They do not know that I have been preparing for this moment my entire werewolf life. My dagger, sword and armor are coated with ointments from the elves and dwarves, which puts a stop to their shapeshifting capabilities and dulls their power. All my training, all my sleepless nights and all my suffering shall now serve its purpose. I will not falter. Long have I waited for this day. Consider this curse my penance for failing you all those years ago, my beloved Luna. But I swear to you, before your moonlight fades away into the morning sky, I shall avenge your death with every fiber in my being. My dear boy Maximus, before your star stops shining in the night sky, you will guide me to my victory. Your father will punish those that led you to the slaughter. I will make them feel every bit of pain you felt. Long have I waited for this day for villages and towns to be free of dark magic and rituals so that no warrior, father, mother, husband, wife or child will ever meet the same fate that my family did. Long have I waited for the gateway from hell to this land to be closed permanently, for every demon to burn in the very fires they created. Let no monster, good or evil, stand in my way today. For I, Ragnar Leifson, the White Wolf, former captain of the Night Watch, a wifeless husband and a fatherless man, shall have my revenge. There was an ominous sound that traveled in the winter breeze, with ordinary folk keeping warm indoors amidst the snowfall. Though faintly, the sound raises the hair on their body. a sound that was heard by the elves, dwarves, and warriors alike in the cold fortress of the land of Freya. From the vampires all the way in Cascada to supernatural creatures known and unknown hiding in their caves and dungeons, they all heard the massacre. Among the faint screams of torture and struggle, sounds of limbs and flesh being torn apart, there was a roar that froze people with fear. Anne-Marie wore her long black dress, standing on the balcony of a dark, spooky castle, listening intensively to the sound. She then turns back and looks at Dracula. "That noise," she said. "It's coming from the jungle of Belru. Could that be Ragnar? Surely the white wolf cannot be that strong." She continues by saying that I am not doubting you, my lord. It's just... However, Dracula doesn't respond. Not yet, at least. His eyes are focused on the distant jungle. "My lord?" she says, but this time she sensed an expression from the almighty Dracula that she never would have expected to see. An expression of fear. Flair Tepish never looked at Anne-Marie. He hid his trembling hands from her and felt an icy chill touch the back of his neck. "No," he said. His words were afraid of leaving his tongue. "You are correct, Anne-Marie, that is not Ragnar. I do not know who or what that is." While fear consumed the faces of many, the white wolf in his knight armor, accompanied by his best friends the elf and dwarf, stood in the village of the Harrow overlooking the jungle, waiting patiently for the massacre to come to an end. Myra the witch, with the tablet in hand, had joined them shortly after and saw the monster clan laying on the ground lifeless. They had arrows in their bodies and deep gashes from a large axe in their chest, but most of them were ripped apart. After explaining the jungle mission to the trio, they waited out the massacre. "Why are you smiling?" the witch asked the white wolf. But he responded with a statement that shocked not only her but the elf and dwarf as well. Ragnar looked at the jungle and said, "At this moment, only for this moment, with his rage fully consuming his entire soul, he is much, much stronger than I am." That monstrous, deep and menacing roar whispering in the winter wind came from none other than Victor the werewolf. The stories told about the occupants of the jungle were not far-fetched in any way. The creatures were described as fearless, evil beings that could not feel pain, and monsters that would devour anyone in their sight. Victor the werewolf made all those statements untrue. With his glowing red eyes and rage flowing through his veins, with his large muscles and fur blowing in the wind, he faced those monsters head-on. One werewolf against an army of the cursed. Little did they know that Victor had a curse of his own, the curse of the werewolf. The monster barbarians were the oldest and biggest bullies known in the land, but now Victor had treated them like his test subjects. They lunged and leaped towards him with their sharp teeth and dirty fingernails, not forgetting their possessed hunger of cannibalism and heightened speed. They outnumbered the werewolf by 1,000 to 1. Victor, however, was prepared for this. Alternating between an upright stance to a low, stealthy one, he dodged their attacks and clawed the first horde like they were pillows being tossed at him. The second group threw their spears at the werewolf while charging forward. This horde managed to get the closest while surrounding him and impaled Victor's body with their weapons. However, it seemed the werewolf never felt pain. The wounds inflicted upon him made him stronger, angrier. With his eyes illuminating a fiery red, he removed the weapons from his body. Excruciating pain indeed, but with Victor in this form, felt it merely as an insect bite. His body grew in size. He laughs under his breath and slowly pulls the spear out of his neck while looking at them. Maybe the curse cast upon the barbarians made them foolish or too hunger-driven to realize, With each group charging at the werewolf, they were running towards their demise. Despite the increase in muscle size, Victor moved like a shadow. He ran as low as possible, analyzing their movements, deciphering which tendons he could cut and which ligaments he could tear. In 1 hour and 15 minutes, the barbarians had already decreased by half. Their bites, their punches, their spears and clubs seemed futile against the Grey Wolf. Victor ran like the wind, slicing and dicing them, removing limbs from their bodies like a hot knife cutting through butter. His roars and growls were enough to vibrate the jungle ground and shake the leaves of the trees. And as they decreased in numbers, their roars and battle cries lacked confidence. It lacked vigor. Victor the werewolf could smell it a mile away. The barbarians were terrified of him, and they should be. The jungle of Belru, he thought. No, not anymore. Stories will be told about how an unknown grey werewolf had massacred these barbarians that claimed the lives of so many innocent people. From these monsters being the assailants for thousands of years, they now became the victims. Victor pounced on them like a predator, gnawing at their faces and ripping them to shreds. A red stream flows through the jungle, a stream of blood that carries the severed limbs and organs of the barbarian fiends. A stream that poetically washes away the wrongdoing of these monsters. They could indeed feel pain. With their limbs sliced off their bodies and their agonizing cries filling the jungle, they could feel pain. Then they looked around and realized how few of them were left. The werewolf's roar had frightened them. His sheer size and demeanor made them tremble and hesitant in their movements. His fierce rage had turned the jungle into a slaughterhouse. There was nowhere for them to run. Victor was no warrior. He never moved fluidly or as elegant as Ragnar, nor was his skill at the same level of Fulian the vampire cop. Rather, Victor was a brawler, and that meant he enjoyed beating up these monsters with his fists. What made him so strong? Maybe it was the tablet that he held for a few seconds. Maybe it was him finally snapping over everything that happened. Or maybe the werewolf prophecy was finally coming to light. Attack after attack, horde after horde, he slew them down. He swung his hand left to right, the same way Sauron swung his mace against the army of men, and there was no chance of their survival. The states Victor left their bodies in were too gruesome to imagine. Their bodies twitched from their severed nerves, and blood sprayed out from their dismembered limbs like a waterspout. Fearsome, immortal beings they were. No, just corpses now lying on the ground, which Victor continued to step on and turn into mush, almost like he was not satisfied with their punishment. The jungle was then quiet. His wounds were healed thanks to the regenerative healing factor that werewolves had. Then he took a deep breath in, filling his lungs with air and tightening his chest. There was one more thing left to do, one more message to send to every evil being lurking in the shadows, that this jungle had now belonged to him. That particular message was Victor's battle cry. And as his rage subsided, the werewolf's eyes had now turned blue. His size reverted to normal and he seemed much calmer than before. Thus, the cursed barbarians turned into cannibal monsters were no more. Victor then sat on a large rock. His body and mind were tired and his muscles were heavy and burning. And just when the werewolf thought he could finally rest, he never realized the Crones were right behind him. Lancelot the goblin creature walked in the hallway of one of the dungeons in hell. Since the monster council took place, he felt a sense of unease and needed answers. Zelzar the hired demon, was lying to them. But his path wasn't an aimless one. He was making his way to the basement to summon someone that knew the ins and outs of hell. A gatekeeper, if you will. Another goblin creature so foul and deceitful that gave information for a hefty price. Lancelot reached the basement and found a goblin guard by the door. "Speak the password and enter," the guard said. Lancelot took a deep breath in and whispered, "Rumpelstiltskin." The guard then moved aside and let him pass. Rumpelstiltskin, the imp, sat on a comfortable chair like he owned the place. His ears large like Lancelot, but certainly much older. He had rings on his fingers and he moved them around. His eyes had nothing but darkness behind them.
Lancelot, was it? Fancy seeing you in my basement,"
he said.
"It's been quiet in here, you know. Folk don't have much to give me anymore. But you know the rules. My information comes at a hefty price."
Lancelot sat on a wooden chair less comfortable than the one Rumpelstiltskin used. In his high-pitched, peculiar voice, he said,
5. I am willing to give you 5.
Rumpelstiltskin laughed cunningly.
5? What will I do with 5? Come now, you're a goblin. Naturally, you have much more to give me than others. Why don't we double that number and I tell you everything that you need to know?
Lancelot, with his big goblin eyes, pointy large ears, and a surprisingly adorable face compared to the other goblins, sighed. He crossed his tiny hands and said,
"Fine. 10 years of my life. You get 10 years of my miserable life."
10 will do.
Rumpelstiltskin gave a ring to Lancelot and made him hold it tight in his hand. An orb of white energy flew out from the short goblin's chest into the ring, sealing the deal. Rumpelstiltskin took the ring back and then wore it.
"Very well,"
he said.
"What's in your mind is correct. Zalzar was lying to you. You really think the prophecy would be tied to a pathetic lesser demon such as Arkine? Intelligent and cunning, but pathetic nevertheless. The higher demon will get rid of those not valuable to him or those he sees as a threat, which means your days as a servant are numbered and your best friend will be tossed aside just like the rest. The prophecy has a loophole, something Arkine managed to fool everyone with. His 4 monsters can be killed, but not the last. Jorah cannot be defeated by just any werewolf. We both know who could do such a thing."
The next words Rumpelstiltskin uttered widened Lancelot's eyes. The short goblin began having a panic attack in the basement, hearing everything unfold, and then stormed out at once. The basement was filled with the echoing sadistic laughter of Rumpelstiltskin. Lancelot made haste at once, his strides panicky and filled with speed. His peculiar toes managed to grip the cold floor much easier than the other creatures. His large ears heard the curses being thrown at him from the other demons. Goblins were always treated unfairly in the world. He never cared about Arkine. He never cared about Zalzar, nor did he care about hell. He was forced to serve them. But for now, he ran and ran until he entered the dungeon of his best friend, Monrog the Hellhound. Lancelot, since he was born, took care of the Hellhound. Everyone was scared of Monrog because of how he looked, but they never saw his good heart, not like Lancelot. From patching his wounds to providing him company, the duo was inseparable. Indeed, Monrog looked absolutely terrifying with his fiery eyes, sharp canines, and tight black skin wrapped over his muscles. But when he saw Lancelot, his tail wagged uncontrollably. The goblin said,
"Mon, I have something to tell you. But first, how are your wounds? Did that big oaf Ragnar hurt you? I swear, give me a moment with him and bam, I'll knock him out."
Monrog shook his head and then chuckled. The Hellhound licked the goblin's face to show how much he missed him and reassured him that he was okay. The hound then sat on his throne, eager to hear everything his friend had to say.
"Okay, so I spoke to Rumpelstiltskin and hey, you know, I could gift you the power to speak again like the last time, although you have to be in your true form. And Mon, I really need you to speak to me here.
The hellhound wagged his tail even more. He was always fond of this part. Monrog shook his body like a wet animal trying to shake off the water. His eyes glowed red and the throne began shaking. And then... Monrog was now in a humanoid hound form, with large muscles, elegant thin fur, pointy ears and red eyes as he sat on the throne like a king. His 9 feet tall true form that he kept hidden from everyone except Lancelot. The form that made him a force to reckon with. The hellhound leaned forward and said,
I'm so glad to see you, my dear friend. You look troubled. What is the matter? Was there any demon worrying you? Shall I devour them?
But as Monrog sat on his throne, Lancelot explained everything to him. And while the first part was difficult for the hellhound to listen to, this was something that he expected from the start. Lancelot told him how the hellhound's brothers, Monrax and Monrix, were planning on killing him. Zalza was the one that orchestrated the entire thing and gave them an incentive that if they killed Victor in the woods of Redwater, then he would personally help them take Monrog out. The next part was about the demon army. It wasn't being led by Zalza. Just like how Arkine was Zalza's underling, Zalza was serving someone else. Someone far more powerful. The Crones were not the only gateway from hell to earth. Arkine was. He'd retrieved his 1,000 souls, then why was he still on earth? Zalza could have pardoned him, but chose to keep him on the land. The higher demon knew the White Wolf had been hunting down the Crones, and after Ragnar killed 3 of them when he was much younger, Zalza put Arkine on earth as a failsafe if all the Crones died. Furthermore, the trials have a loophole. Even if Victor activates the tablet, he will always fail the last trial, since no one can kill Jorah but Belru, and since Belru was dead, this was a lose-lose situation. More so, Arkine can be killed. The trials would just be the final nail in his coffin. The witch they spoke about in the Monster Council, the same witch Monrog didn't attack, could help in this matter. Arkine is a demon shapeshifter, but not just in the flesh. His soul can possess others as well, which was how he lived for so long. The last time that he and Victor fought, the Grey Werewolf didn't check the body properly. Hence, Arkine's soul managed to possess Red Riding Hood. If Victor kills Arkine again, the witch needs to be present. She can seal the demon with her spells and keep him locked away. Arkine was the one responsible for making creatures from hell weaker when they spent time on Earth. This was a law that he created just so no demon could hunt him while he made his devious plans. The Goblin told Monrog how they needed to leave this place. They've been forcibly serving these evil creatures for so long and have tried to leave so many times, but now was their chance. And with Arkine sealed, Monrog nor Lancelot will lose power on Earth. Even if the trials were a lose-lose situation and hell will not be destroyed without Belru, the Hellhound and the Goblin won't be in hell anyway, nor will anyone be able to follow them. Monrog took a deep breath in and said,
Lancelot, I will follow you to the ends of the earth, my dear friend. Neither of us want to stay here anymore. Though, what if we make the trial successful?
The Goblin leaned in with curiosity. Monrog said,
The White Wolf is very strong. Yes, I bested him in battle, but he was holding back. We need to make sure that he doesn't kill all the Crones.
The Goblin replied,
What? Mon, if they are still living, the gateway will still be opened. We will be hunted for the rest of our lives on Earth. That's no different than living in this hellhole. No pun intended.
Monrog said,
But that's just it. What if we could actually destroy hell? What if we used one of the Crones to bring Belru back from the dead? The Grey Wolf is strong as well. I have no doubt he will be victorious in the first 4 trials, but as you said, that only Belru can defeat Jorah.
The Goblin took a minute to ponder at what the Hellhound said, then slowly nodded his head in agreement.
All right, then we should get going. Let us hope that we never see this place again.
The Hellhound changed back into his normal form just before opening a portal. While he was still a giant beast, the portal would not handle his true form and the Goblin could get hurt. The Goblin locked the dungeon door and packed some snacks in his pockets for the journey. Thus, Monrog and his peculiar Goblin friend Lancelot set out to Earth for a mission of their own. A mission that was far from easy. A mission that will decide their future. Maybe recruiting Myra in their plan would be the simple part. Maybe teleporting Victor and Arkine to the same location and having them fight it out won't be that difficult. However, how were they going to convince the White Wolf to spare one of the Crones in his thirst for revenge? Nevertheless, for the Goblin and the Hellhound to live happily on Earth, away from the suffering and the hardship, they best hope their mission ends up being a success. Rumpelstiltskin got up from his chair and exited the dark and cold basement. He used a walking stick as he made his way down a dungeon passage in hell. Every monster, every demon, and everything in between that existed in that vile place had bowed down to him. Why wouldn't they? When he was the one that taught demons how to make deals. When he was the king of the Underworld. The imp had so much of power yet very little strength. He had so much of influence without even lifting a finger. But how does one reach such a position of building an empire in the Underworld? Rumpelstiltskin walked into his room and looked at what seemed like an endless wooden filing cabinet. He removed the ring from his finger, the same ring that he used for Lancelot, and kept it in one of the drawers. The ring had reached its limit. 100 deals were made and the cold metal on his finger would not hold any more years. However, when he opened the drawer, there were at least 400 rings kept away, and that was just from one compartment. Rumpelstiltskin, being almost as old as the first angel and demon, had lived a life of stealing the years from others. He made deals by gifting them information that no one, human or supernatural, would be capable of knowing. He was a cunning, devious, and manipulative goblin that no matter how glum things looked, he always had his way. Although, his power over the Underworld was not just because of his deals, mainly because of the people that served him. The evil goblin opened the door towards the side of his room and saw 3 cloaked beings sitting on chairs. Their dark hooded cloaks covered almost everything of them, but with their hands being visible while unable to fully know by an outsider if they were male or female, one thing was indeed certain: these mysterious beings were somewhat human. The first being stood up and bowed his head as Rumpelstiltskin smiled and called him son. He had a red-like aura like mist or smoke that constantly surrounded him. The second one did the same, except she was surrounded by green smoke. This being was much more slender as her skeleton hands were clearly visible. The third one had blue smoke surrounding him. It was thick and heavy and mainly lingered by his feet, but he too bowed in respect and called Rumpelstiltskin father. Rumors had surrounded these mysterious cloaked beings of being faceless. However, those that have seen their faces spent nights on end in the hospital beds, stricken with severe nightmares, right until their hearts stopped beating. Rumpelstiltskin coughed as old people do and then sat down on his chair.
"My children," he tells them, "the trials are going to begin. It seems your brother's rebellious behavior and disrespect towards me has begun taking its toll. I do not concern myself with the downfall of this hell or the land itself, for I know there are many worlds and timelines that we have lived through and will continue to do so. However, if your brother succeeds in his plan, the Underworld in every timeline will cease to exist.
Find him and bring him to me. Dead or alive, it doesn't matter."
Rumpelstiltskin tapped his walking stick on the ground as the three cloaked mysterious beings bowed once more and left at once. They moved like the smoke surrounding them, quick, frightening, and elusive. As those dark, cloaked, phantom-like beings rode on their horses of similar color, they vanished into a portal and set out on their mission. But who were these mysterious beings that loyally served Rumpelstiltskin the imp and caused so much of fear in the Underworld? Similar to how the timeline in this world has been shifted for Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, and Jack and Jill thus shares the same timeline with Rumpelstiltskin. His story pretty much remains the same as the tale that we know, with 4 major differences. When the miller sold his daughter to the king from lying that she could spin straw into gold, the king ordered her to do just that in his castle. In despair, the woman did not know what to do, as no human could turn straw into gold. However, the miller's daughter met an imp in the castle who never revealed his name. This goblin-like creature fulfilled the task the king gave to her and did indeed turn straw into gold. The king was impressed that this beautiful woman in his castle could be worthy of such a feat. He was pleased with her and married her to his son. However, the woman did not forget the goblin that helped her. One day, the miller's daughter snuck out the castle and saw him sitting around the fire in the woods. With tears of joy, she says to him, "Oh, thank you, dear goblin. It is because of you the king chose me to marry his son. But how could I ever repay you?" The goblin smiled cunningly and said,
If you cannot tell me my name by the time you give birth, you shall gift me your firstborn child. No exceptions, that is my deal,
he said.
Or your secret shall be revealed to the king.
Time passed and the beautiful woman lived a happily married life. But when she got pregnant, fear consumed her body when she remembered what the goblin said. She tried and tried by asking every villager, every townsfolk, and every angel in existence what was the goblin's name, but to no avail. Since Rumpelstiltskin was a demon, with only the Underworld knowing who he was. And in this version, the miller's daughter never did find out his name. She had no choice but to give her firstborn away and lie to her king, her husband, and every servant in the castle that her child was taken. The goblin carried the child and placed him on a warm, cozy bed inside his old village home. The miller's daughter, however, did not realize that she was the 4th victim of Rumpelstiltskin's scheme, as he had taken 3 other babies that he had taken care of 1 month apart from each other. He loved them like a father and gave them everything they ever needed. And as they remained lying down on the bed with the most adorable smiles in all the land, Rumpelstiltskin said,
Well, I'm going to have to keep suitable names for the powers that I give to you, my dear children.
Now, as much as Belru, the first werewolf, was blamed for changing the timeline of this world, it all began with Rumpelstiltskin and his greed and cunningness for power. It was no wonder that everyone in hell, heaven, and earth feared the goblin creature, since he had the most powerful children. And as the 2 horsemen and 1 horsewoman, famine, conquest, and war ride on their dark and evil horses, surrounded by their respective auras, they search for their brother, hoping to stop him from meddling in the lives of humans and causing the downfall of the Underworld. However, the mystery remains. Why is Death trying to help the werewolves? Victor felt a cold whisper behind his neck. He felt an ominous presence multiplied by 5, and just before he turned around, the grey werewolf was no longer in the jungle of Belru. Some form of teleportation, but why here? Despite the withered trees covered in snow, the werewolf recognized this place, the woods of Redwater where he fought Monrax and Monrix. Victor turned around in a swift motion, his body tensed and muscles tight. his glowing blue eyes focused on the ominous foes in front of him. "Who are you?" he asks. 5 witches stood closely next to each other, their faces pale and skin tight. Their eyes had an emptiness to them and their dark, old cloak stained with evil. These were no ordinary foes. They were the Crones of the Coven. Eleanor, standing in the village of the Harrow, had begun panicking. "Ragnar," she says, "I cannot see him anymore. He is not in the jungle." The White Wolf, startled as ever, jumped to his feet. He's breathing heavier than before. "How could I be so foolish?" he says. He slams his sword on the ground in frustration. Ragnar Leifson hoped the Crones would ambush Victor in the jungle after his raid subsided, which would give the White Wolf a perfect shot at these evil hags. While he was correct in saying the Crones were cowards, waiting to attack Victor when he was depleted of his energy, Ragnar had forgotten the most important thing. The Crones were very intelligent. The jungle still holds the curse of Belru. No human or supernatural being could ever harm the jungle itself, for it shall be reverted onto the attacker. The Crones knew they would not be able to use their dark magic in that place. Ragnar's nerves calmed a little when the elf said, "There, I see him. The woods of Redwater. Ragnar, hurry. The Crones have surrounded Victor." The White Wolf turned to Myra the witch and said, "You know what to do. If dark magic indeed flows through your veins, this task should not be difficult for you." While the other 2 Crones checked around the perimeter of the woods for any threats, the 3 remained in front of Victor. The leader of this group, Hazel, stands in the middle. Left of her was Ursula, and on the right was Esme, Ragnar's prey. Certainly, this wasn't how the Crones looked. Now they may be young, with smooth pale skin, long and slender, but in reality, this was just a mere spell to hide their hunched stance and rotting flesh.
"Where is the tablet?"
asked Hazel. Esme had interrupted.
"Who cares? Let's just get him."
"Silence, Esme.
Ursula intervened.
Your antics is the reason the White Wolf hunts us. It is best to keep your mouth shut."
Victor took a deep breath in, filling his lungs with air. He couldn't show these evil witches that he was functioning on fumes. His muscles were sore, legs tired, and his strength was at an all-time low. Still, he charges forward. He felt the cold wind biting his ears. He felt his legs almost trying to give way and collapse his body, but still he runs. And just as he growls with anger and loads up his right hand to land a massive punch, a purple portal opens up in front of him, and so the werewolf disappears. "What the? Where the hell am I?" Victor stood stunned in the new woodland location. His breathing slowed down as he heard a calm, soothing, soft and warm voice say,
"Do you remember how you threw me into my own portal? Well, my dear Grey Wolf, now we are even."
Myra the witch stood behind Victor, smiling at him as the werewolf smiled back. Victor's body then eased up as they embraced. However, the moment of a reunited friendship was cut short when Lancelot and Monrog landed at the exact same spot from the portal they opened in hell. As Victor and Myra took their battle stances, Monrog remained calm while Lancelot held his hands up and said,
Hey, everyone just calm the fudge down. We are here to help."
With a high shriek echoing in the first woodland location, the Crones were infuriated. "Where is he?" Hazel exclaimed. "Find him and bring him to me, now." But there was a deep voice that whispered in the woods. The cold winter wind did not bother the Crones, but this voice, this was the sound that sent a chill down their spines. "You cannot run from me anymore." Ragnar the White Wolf stood behind them. He was no coward. He would not attack them from behind. He wanted them to see his face and look into his eyes, and know this was the day they die. He unsheathed his silver sword and said, "I'm going to break all the bones in your bodies
and just when your soul is about to leave your flesh, I will resuscitate you and do it all over again.
Young and beautiful, what a facade. Ragnar knew how foul these witches really were. They began circling him, sending their dark magical spells at the werewolf. Ragnar deflected it with his sword, something they never expected. His eyes glowing red and his muscles larger than ever, he dodged their attacks with so much of elegance and ease. His movements were so fluid, almost like this giant weighed less than a feather. Then Esme, the crone that ruined his life, had decided to cast her own magic. The werewolf could see how frightened she was, since she was the weakest. Ragnar roared at her as he watched her stumble backwards. She would not die so quickly. No, the white wolf would save her for last. Hazel was the strongest from this group, and her magic did in fact wound Ragnar. Each beam, each orb, and every spell sent by her had begun dismantling his armor. As blood filled the werewolf's mouth, he reached behind his back and pulled out large daggers which he tossed at Hazel, slowing her down. Next was Ursula's turn. The switch had sent out a very troublesome form of magic. It looked like shrapnel exploding from a grenade and burnt Ragnar's skin when it touched him. Still, the white wolf knew to keep his power hidden. It was not yet time. One thing that did bother him though was how weak the Crones were. Then, as he ran, dove, lunged and leaped, dodging their attacks, he could not help but feel like something was amiss. Were these all the weaker sisters? Now they were moving in closer. The two Crones that checked the perimeter earlier, Hilda and Sabrina, snuck up behind the werewolf. First move was by Sabrina. However, this was no ordinary werewolf they were sneaking up against. Ragnar dashed to the side, sliding on the icy ground, and punched the witch so hard she flew across the woods. Just when Hilda thought she could capitalize while Ragnar wasn't looking, he placed his large arm around her neck, pulled her towards him and slowly pushed his sword through her chest. This wouldn't kill someone like her, just slow her down. Ragnar was still waiting for something. Ursula decided to try once more. This time, her magical orbs were much larger and heavier than before. Ragnar Leifson held his shield out in front. The elvish medicine and the unique oils and weapons and armor were certainly doing the trick, for now. Then the impact shattered the armor shoulder pads into a million pieces, and just when Hazel was sneaking up on Ragnar to land the finishing blow, he revealed a unique skill of his own. Ragnar the White Wolf could vanish at will. Hazel never had time to process what just happened. Ragnar placed his arm around her neck and said, "If you wanted to die first, you should have told me." Ragnar tossed her to the ground and began stomping on her body. He heard every bone break as the witch choked on her own blood. He picked her up and slammed her again until Hazel couldn't move. And as she lies on the ground lifeless, her body changes from young to old, showing her true, evil, rotten, and vile appearance. One down, 4 more to go. The rest of the Crones shrieked in anger after witnessing the gruesome murder of their sister. They had forsaken the spell to make them appear young, then turned into their old selves. All their dark magic, all their evil spells and tricks, were now being conjured up in their hands. Esme, frightened as ever, slowly built an orb of dark energy. Second was Ursula, channeling all her power towards her fingers. Third was Sabrina with a large magical ball spinning rapidly in her palm. Last but not least was Hilda conjuring up roots from the ground just to trap Ragnar and hold him down. This was an attack filled with desperation. Ragnar growled and charged at the Crones head-on. With no more dwarven armor or elvish medicine to protect him, with no more shields to lessen the impact, it was time. Now, my dear listeners and viewers, if you really think the White Wolf's hidden power was only vanishing at will, you are sorely mistaken. His secret power was In 5 seconds, down goes Ursula, her bones broken as Ragnar promised. The switch lied on the ground as she had taken her last breath. Sabrina lay a great distance away with only a fallen branch holding her neck from bending backwards after Ragnar snapped it. Third was Hilda. She was paralyzed from the neck down. This will indeed be a slow and painful death. One crone remained untouched, Esme. The evil witch crawled on the ground, trembling with fear. She said, "How is that possible? You were at 3 places at once." The white wolf walked towards her, slowly but menacingly, with his large claws ready to slice. Ragnar grabbed the witch and tossed her with all his might against the tree trunk. The branches impaled her body as blood spat out of her mouth. He grabs her once again and pulls her out of the tree. The witch softly moans in agonizing pain. With such force, surely all the bones in her body were broken. But Ragnar repeated the gesture. He grabbed her head and swung her body against the tree trunk with even more might than before. This time blood shot out from her chest as her sternum shattered.
"Look at me,"
Ragnar says as he moves closer towards her.
"Look into my eyes and see my wife hanging from a rope in a basement."
Once more, he slammed the witch against the tree. He could see it in her eyes. What little life remained was trying to leave her body.
"Look into my eyes, you vile creature, and you will see the body of my son."
For the last time, Ragnar Leifson the White Wolf picked up the crone and slammed her against the tree. Her body was mangled. Not a single bone was intact. And as the crone slowly falls to the ground like her corpse was made of rubber, Ragnar steps on her and spits on the ground. The wounds he sustained from the battle began healing, but the blood still stained his white fur. His breathing heavy and his heart aching with pain. But he rose. He roars for his Luna and Maximus. He roars as a father taking revenge for his wife and child. However, Ragnar could hear breathing. Hazel still fighting for her life. Her legs were broken as she dragged herself on the ground. Ragnar Leifson lifts his giant, monstrous foot up in the air, ready to stomp the crone's face. Then, just as Ragnar was going to deal the finishing blow, he hears footsteps behind him. Footsteps that he did not recognize. Dracula takes off his long grey coat as the winter wind blows through his long hair. "The White Wolf, I expected you to be bigger."